Have the image, the people have the image of the single-family house. It has the dignity. Each one has a good doorway and a good window and a grass strip and a sidewalk and the elms planted and a narrow street and a green and able to walk. And that place, Seaside Park, now in 1999, is a beloved and carefully taken care of neighborhood in Bridgeport. Everybody loves it. It's cherished. And right across the street, which is Iranistan Boulevard, named for P.T. Barnum's house in Bridgeport. There's a housing project put up in the late 30s, in which all of that is gone, in which there are barracks in asphalt, in which there's no identification of anybody in these barracks, and it's had to be rebuilt at least once, and it was for a long time, I'm told, the center of drug distribution in that part of Bridgeport. Whereas across the way, a totally different environment, totally different town, totally different place.
Well, it's apparent from the passion you bring to this subject why the first winner of the Vincent Scully Award is Vincent Scully. Good to talk to you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Now, another of our conversations about new books. Ray Suarez takes a walk with an architect.
With its white picket fences, front porches, and narrow streets, the community of Kentland seems like a throwback, where kids still walk to school, and mothers and babies can stroll into town without worrying about heavy traffic or parking a car. In fact, Kentlands, a 352-acre housing development in Gaithersburg, Maryland, is only 10 years old. There are 1,700 houses, townhouses, cottages, and apartments here, with about 3,000 people living in them. Kentlands was created by architects Andres Duany and Elizabeth Plater-Zyberk, authors of a new book, Suburban Nation, and leaders of a growing movement called the New Urbanism. That movement aims to put an end to the kind of suburban development that's dominated American life in the past 50 years. The anonymous cookie-cutter houses, congested 8-lane intersections, cavernous, soulless shopping malls. Instead, Duany and Plater-Zyberk argue for the traditional urban neighborhood and the small town, where in 5 minutes a resident can walk to a store, a park, even to work. Besides Kentlands, Duany and Plater-Zyberk have designed 120 other communities around the country, all in the new urbanist style. Recently, Elizabeth Plater-Zyberk showed me around Kentlands.
Explain to us why this building looks the way it does and why it's where it is.
Well, these houses at Kentlands are not that different from their counterparts in subdivisions around here. Inside, the plans are almost exactly the same. What makes it different is that it's much closer to the street. The porch is just a few feet away from the sidewalk. And you notice you're not seeing the garage out front.
Oh, yeah.
So this whole street...
Where is it?
The garage is in the back,
Oh, okay.
on an alley, in an outbuilding, a separate building from the house, not unlike the one you see across the lawn there, which has the garage below and a small apartment above. As you walk along the street, you can see what a pleasant street it is to walk along because there's constant houses. It's not interrupted by driveways. The sidewalk's not going up and down with the curb cuts because the cars are kept to the back. And meanwhile, you can be saying hello to your neighbors, people who might be sitting on the front porch.
Do you come back and check to see whether they really do, though? I mean, do we know whether people use this porch?
We hear about it.
Prices in Kentlands, as in its surrounding area, have skyrocketed in the last few years. The most expensive single-family houses go for over $1 million. A townhouse can range from $200,000 to $360,000. A cottage rental, $900 a month. And an important feature of the new urbanism is they can all be found in the same neighborhood.
Why is it an important part of the design to have houses of different sales price together?
It's an important part of the idea because it happens so little. In the last several decades, we have built housing that's been separated by price point, by income. small houses and big houses are separated. People of different incomes are separated, often by very long distances. And that's not a good social result. So this is really a breakthrough. It's breaking the conventions to build this way.
Plater Zyberk and I then walked into Kentland's town center, where she explained why its wide sidewalks and narrow streets make for a friendlier and safer place to shop.
So if the effect is the same, people get stuff and they get services, why is it important to do it this way instead of doing it the way we've been doing it?
Well, one of the reasons this form is important is, besides the stuff that's here, the stores and the services, there are also people who live within walking distance. And the walk is not across two enormous parking lots and a 6-lane road. It's around the corner, along a wide sidewalk like this, along a narrow street where parked cars protect you as a pedestrian.
So how is the social landscape different from what it would be in a regional mall, which has many of the same services?
This is the kind of town center or downtown where you will get to know the storekeepers. You will, on the way to the hairdresser, stop and have a cup of coffee. Those kinds of interconnections. You'll tell them if the older lady down the street needs to have something delivered because she's ill. It's hard to imagine that. That just doesn't happen in a mall or a strip center.
Do you and Andres Duani feel like you're swimming upstream against the culture? We can travel 10 minutes from here in any direction and see the absolute antithesis of what you prescribe in the book being built, being planned for next year and the year after.
That's right. Swimming upstream is probably a good way to put it, but at one point we hope to reach what's known as the tipping point, in which the tide changes.
But if you ask people who are looking for houses what they want, a lot of the things that you're designing against is really what they want. They want the semicircular drives and the segregated
autonomy.
space so that houses are all together and commercial space are all together somewhere else. That's what they want.
Absolutely, and there will always be people who want the autonomy of a freestanding house, making their choices about driving to their needs. That's a part of our history here in this country. But you know, we already have plenty of that stuff. Our metropolitan areas are now more suburban than they are urban, and there will always be plenty of that kind of suburbia for the people who seek that kind of lifestyle. What there is not right now in most places is the ability to make the choice to live in a community that is community-oriented and where people choose to be interdependent and choose to walk to transit or to the corner store or to the school.
Are the places you've designed going to be allowed to age in place the way a neighborhood in the middle of the city might be able to age in place? Will people be able to change their windows, repaint their houses?
Those kinds of quality controls, I think we've seen over the last few decades, really serve their communities well in terms of keeping long-term value. That doesn't mean that you couldn't put an addition onto your house or change the front porch, change the paint color. That kind of freedom is in there.
Mm-hmm. Does it have to be approved by others, though?
Usually, there's some mechanism for that.
Well, let's talk a little bit about your critics. I'm sure you know what they say. One of the charges is that you're sentimentalists, that you're designing nostalgia. How do you respond to that?
You know, sentimental and nostalgic, since you attach it to critics, might appear to be pejorative words, but in fact, we don't think they are, especially in this time of technological change, constant change. People change jobs very easily. The idea that your place of residence might have some kind of stability and some kind of connection with a larger picture, whether it's